What we'll do is, I think we've got everyone kind of joined us into the session. So in the chat box, my colleague Sabina is going to put a link. And what that link will do, will send you out to a website. I'll just say sending out to our website. And if you just click on that, it may ask you a few questions about yourself, just so we get a bit of information. And then you can just click and download it. So Sabina, if you could just put in the chat box the link to the webinar, that'd be great. Sorry, the link to the download. Just gonna. Oh. Yep, so we've got it right there. Yep, Sabina's do that. So click on that. It might take a few moments for you to download, so I'm just going to wait a little moment till everybody's got a chance to do that. If you've got any problems, if you just send a little chat to Sabina, she should be able to help you. She's my colleague joining me to make sure we can do any technical stuff. So anyone who's just joined us, welcome. I'm Bev Holloway. If you missed my name, I'm Head of Learning Solutions here at 9 Dots. So you're welcome to have your cameras on or off. It's nice to see other faces other than mine. So hopefully you're starting to download that. It might take a few moments to do that. So I'm just going to give you a second to do that. Got a great amount of people on the session today. That's fantastic and really good. It's one of the series of webinars we're doing. So let me just talk through a bit about the objectives as you're downloading that. So by the end of this webinar, what we will be thinking you to do is to understand the concept of unconscious bias. It might be something you've heard of before, or maybe not. So let's understand a little bit more about that. Maybe challenge some of your thinking if you want to challenge your thinking, to maybe think a little bit differently, or maybe understand the way you do that and overcome your biases in a way that will be useful for you. So to help you to think about different ways to do that. So I think most people now have managed to download that. If you're having any trouble, if you just on the chat box at the bottom right, you can click on. You can just click on Sabina. If you just email her, she'll be able to. Sorry, chat box her. She'll be able to help you. Good. So let's start the session. I think we're pretty much there. Let's start the session. So let's think about bias. Let's think about unconscious bias. And I'm really interested to hear, what have you heard about unconscious bias? So there's probably been some stuff in the news that you might have heard of. The University in Scotland, St Andrews, was talked about around, asking people to kind of say their personal guilt. Not quite how it sort of transpired in real life, but of course headlines get grabbed. But I'm just interested to hear what people think of their of unconscious bias, or what have they heard that. So just pop in the chat box, what you know about it, what you've heard about it, maybe what you think about it. I like it when people think a little bit differently. It doesn't have to be that. Great. So let's hear your views. So all you need to do is go into the chat box on the bottom right hand side and just click in the links.
I'm missing off this, so I've got to answer this. Bit dark, isn't it?
I'll take that thing.
So I'm just hearing some people. If you just pop yourselves on mute, just make sure we don't get any background noise, unless of course you want to do that. Great, here we go. Yes, Emily, you're absolutely right. Everyone has unconscious biases, and it's absolutely right that we do. It's a good reason for it, which I'll explain in a moment. You don't even know it's happening when you're doing it. Thank you, you're right. Yeah, it can be something that the whole point of that is unconscious. We're trying to make it maybe conscious bias and think about what you might do with that. I like it, Rachel. Disliking men with beards, as my ex had one. Interesting comment, because we're going to be looking at that. Okay, we've got Simon. Relatively new concept. Yeah, in business, they're sort of moving in. You might hear about it in terms of diversity. I like it, Mike. You've kind of given it a nice kind of definition, almost an inherent prejudice we do have. We don't even realize it. Well, there's some really good information, Catherine, instinctive judgments that we make about everything without realizing it. I think my organization's directors definitely recruit. Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm biased. Yeah. We all have biases, make distribution. Yeah, so we've got some really good thinking around this already. I like it. So yeah, and Lynn, that's a nice one that you've put there, sort of instinctively choosing to go with our own likeness. So yes, that is a type of bias here. So let's talk a little bit about bias then, and what we know about it. So certainly you may have heard the story when I was younger. There was a riddle that used to go around, and you know, I'm sort of middle-aged now, and it used to go something along the lines of there is a father and a child in a car crash, and the father is taken in and he's unconscious, and the child has to be operated on, and the surgeon goes into the operating room and says, I can't operate on this child because they are my son. And sort of quite a few years ago, then people's maybe unconscious bias or the thought process would be that, well, how is that? And the reason being is that the surgeon is the mum. But a few years ago, a lot of people would have been confused or baffled. They would have said, oh, was the child adopted? Because they would have been thinking that the father was the surgeon, because we used to really, in the working environment, only really have, well, more surgeons were male. So there's this unconscious bias that we have, that happens. And we have these unconscious biases, and you can read this part in the handout, because there are patterns, there are things that we do, and you've mentioned it in your chat box as well. There's things that we do that there's patterns that we make that allow us to make sense of the world. So we pick up patterns, we pick up different things to help us try and compartmentalize, get through, help us make decisions. And there's no wrong or right in that happens. We're human, we're trying to do that. So in terms of some of those biases that people have may have heard of, one of them is called social comparison. So this is the bias that we have. It's a bit like that idea of keeping up with the Joneses. We like to try and keep up with people. We like to compare ourselves with others. How well are we doing against other people? How can sometimes be a bit material, or it can be more value-based. So we compare ourselves to others. Again, we may not realize we're doing that. Affinity bias is exactly the one that was spoken about. I think it was it Gail that mentioned it a bit earlier, the idea that we like people who are like ourselves, so we sort of warm more towards people who we have an affinity for. And then confirmatory bias, this is where we confirm our biases. So we might see or make a decision about a car we like, and then when we hear about that type of car, that model of car, we will, ever since we've bought it, we'll be thinking, yes, that's the right car, and you'll hear all the good stories about it, and you'll take all that good stories in. But actually, there might be some bad stories about it, but we decide not to look at that. We sort of have an unconscious bias around that. So yes, Leisha, you talked about the halo effect, which is that sort of confirmatory. They come in a, maybe if we're doing an interview, somebody comes in and they really impress you with the first question, so you listen to all their questions, all their answers through that sort of halo, so you don't listen out for maybe the things that they're not saying, or the things that they're saying a bit negatively, or vice versa, they're maybe a bit late, so you get this negative view of them straight away. So yeah, good examples of that. So hopefully you've got a bit of an idea about the types of biases. There are more, but we're just focusing on these three for these. So if I've got some scenarios here, and I just want you to think through these scenarios. And all I want you to do is just in the chat box, write which type you think the scenario might be. So that, you know, if you don't, it's not about getting it right or wrong, it's about thinking it through. So out of the three, so we had social comparison, we had affinity, and confirmatory bias. What do you think this one would be? So an interviewer greets a candidate, and in the small talk on the way to the interview room, both discuss rugby. And they find out that they support the same team as each other, and coincidentally, many of the other team members. They animatedly talk about a recent match where the rugby team came back from behind in the last few minutes of the game. So during that decision-making discussion at the end of the interview, they explain they really think the candidate would fit into the existing team. So what do we think? Do we think that's a social comparison, affinity, or do we think it's confirmatory? And we're getting some through. I'm waiting for a few more. Yeah, most people here, fantastic, are coming up with affinity. That's right. So they're talking about the rugby. They might like the team, a lot of people in the team. So they're getting a bias around that affinity. Now, this person might be absolutely right for the job. So that's okay. But is this person thinking in a way that actually is useful? Are they making that decision on the right decision that this person is right for the role, right for the team? Or is it based on whether they like the rugby team? I suspect a few of you have come across something similar. I often get told that when I go there. Oh, Judy, you, as I speak it now, you said actually happened to this. Yeah, absolutely, great. And Isha, yeah, a bit of confirmatory maybe going on in the background too. So the next one. Joe was recently appointed to the position of manager. Now, Sadiq is a member of the team, and they were both in the same team, and he went for the position as well. It was close in terms of skills and experience, but Joe, in the presentation, she was given the role because she provided a clear vision of how she saw the department succeeding. Now that Joe has that role, she seems to be spending a lot of time with Sadiq, watching him closely, really correcting every mistake he makes. So what bias do you think Joe is doing here? It could be affinity, it could be social comparison, and it could be confirmatory. Which do you think? Let's just put in the chat box. Now, Simon, that's a really good question. I'll come on to that in a moment. Where does affinity bias start team fit? And let's talk that through when we're thinking about overcoming. That's a great question. Confirmatory, coming through. Well, interestingly, I would say that this was social comparison. So it doesn't matter which way we think it. There is clearly a bias here. Joe might be a bit concerned unconsciously that Sadiq is going to maybe challenge her role, think that he is better than her. And so there's a social comparison happening, and what she's doing here is trying to make sure that she's asserting her authority, her power over him. So yeah, so I would say social comparison here. Yeah. Peter, I like you said that she was right for the job. I think what she's doing is Sadiq is probably absolutely perfectly good at the job, but she's making sure she's picking things out to make sure she keeps him almost sort of in his position, asserting her authority. And then the last one then, by default you might get this, but interesting, somebody talked about beards earlier. So an interviewer notices a candidate is not clean shaven. The interviewer thinks that people they've worked with previously who are not clean shaven tend to be less proactive and don't seem to be putting the same effort. During the interview, in answer to the customer service question, the candidate provides an example of the hard work and effort he's missed after deadline was missed. Sorry, the hard work and effort he put in after a deadline was missed. In the discussion to make a decision, the interviewer focuses on the fact that the candidate missed the deadline in the first place rather than the effort made. So you can probably guess which one this is, because there's one left by default. But I hear that this kind of happens. So this one is, I think everybody knows, it's confirmatory bias. So they're just making that kind of assumption, maybe we're saying it unconsciously here, that people who clean shaven are not quite right, they're not proactive, but actually beards have become such a big part of fashion at the moment, and we're changing our views and our ways of thinking around what's right to wear for work. There's a lot more sort of smart casual now as opposed to suits and boots. So there is that kind of sort of change. So actually, is this person making that decision, you know, focusing on the wrong thing here, and are they making that decision which this person may not be the best person for the job? Good. So Sabina's just put down, put a link in if you wanted to download the support handout that's helping with the session here. Yeah, Alicia. Yeah, surely we shouldn't judge on experiences. Yes, we shouldn't, but we all have our natural biases, and this is just shown that they are. Now, interestingly, if you look at these three here, so clean shaven, here it's about somebody getting a job, and here it's about a rugby team. If any of you know anything about employment law, in the Equality Act 2010, there were certain protected characteristics that we have. So there are 9 protected characteristics. There is race, maternity and pregnancy related, marital status, gender reassignment, gender, so sex, religion or belief, disability, age, and also sexual orientation. So I think I've done the 9 there. And none of these biases link into that. So we're not actually, these people aren't breaking any laws as such, but maybe actually sometimes we do. There was a study done by Princeton University in 2012, and it found that there was much more of a bias when that a laboratory manager job was going up. CVs were randomly handed with either a male or a female name, so it was the same CV, male, female name, and the people hiring were seen that the male applicants were significantly more competent and hireable than the female applicants. So, you know, this bias can happen unconsciously, and it can actually be something that we might find ourselves in a bit of hot water. It might be illegal. So bias happens whether it's conscious or not, and bias happens, it can happen around protected characteristics or not. So what do we want to do about it? And I kind of go back to Simon's question here, you know, what's the difference between a fit, a good team fit, or, you know, a bias here? So if I let you look at your handout, it's got, you know, ways to overcome an unconscious bias. So you might not want to, but if you do want to, it's about starting to be aware of your assumptions. So I've just described those 3 types. Just be aware of when you're making decisions. Are you assuming some things which may be true or may not be true? Are you tuning into or you're not tuning into an unconscious bias around it? So making yourself aware of your assumptions. So when you're making a decision, maybe just going, let me just question myself here. And then question your reasons for the assumptions. So just really, where is your evidence? So if we take that rugby example, Simon, where is the evidence that this person is a good team fit? What can I see about this person that's a good team fit other than they really like my rugby team? So what you try and do is put some criteria around it. What kind of criteria can you put around a team fit? Well, typically, if we're asking people to be part of a team, we would have a bit of criteria beforehand of what we see as a good team player, how they're great fitting into our team, what we would expect. So there is that idea around putting some kind of criteria around it. And that's really the step is my assumption based on something that's real? And then the third step is my challenging that. If this person were not in that rugby team, would I make that same decision? If this person were not, they hadn't gone for the same job as me, would I be, as Joe was, would I be actually challenging their work? If this person was clean shaven, would I have given them the job? And maybe thinking about all those protected characteristics as well. If this person was this, would I give them the job? So it's really challenging your assumptions and allowing yourself to do that, allowing yourself to think a little bit differently, and then actually make a decision based on that. So I'm not here to whether your decision is the one that makes that decision, but it's about going through these other steps. You should be able to make a really more unbiased decision based on the course of based on what you've seen, what you've noticed about them. So you've got some really good criteria. So say you were recruiting and you were ever challenged on it, you can actually say this is why we made the decision. You've got some really good factual information for them. So interested to hear your thoughts and views. So Simon, actually, yeah, we've got some views here. We employed a fantastic marketeer who put a picture on CV because she had wild pink hair and tattoos. She said the new people get only interviews to people who wouldn't be biased based on their appearance. Really interesting example of owning the bias. Yes, yeah, absolutely. And everything is being challenged at the moment, isn't it? And if you think about models, sort of 5 years ago, people were saying no, you couldn't have models of different shapes, sizes, but now you can. Now we're reflecting society a lot more, so we're starting to challenge our own biases around that. Simon, interesting. So maybe there's a bias towards someone who has that, and so there's a good bias there. Good. So yeah, what's your views about this? What's your thinking? I'm not going to ask you to go off mute if you don't want to, but just in the chat box, let's hear some views around what you think about maybe those bias examples we went through, or maybe really, what you think about the steps that we've talked about. Love the 4 steps, Simon. Yeah, I hope it answers your question as well around, what's the difference between bias and whether they're a good team fit. It's really having that criteria and allowing yourself to be challenged around that. Good. Okay. Great. Questioning your reasoning before making decisions seems good. Yep. Probably more important is making time to challenge. Absolutely, yeah. So that questioning, you're allowing yourselves to open your mind a little bit, and then making that. Be good to use part of decision making. Yeah, actually, maybe have it as part of, I don't know if you do recruitment, but have that as part of it, a step in there, involve others. Yeah, and I really like that, Mike. It's quite good to get different perspectives from people. When I do recruitment and selection courses, it's always that idea that we think things through. With other people there, I always advise having maybe sort of more than one person to help it. Yeah, and if it can be someone who's unlike you, yeah, absolutely. Good, I like it. So what I want to do now is make this a little more interactive. So I'm going to split the many people we've got, which is great, lovely, into breakout sessions. And what I want you to do is maybe, if you're comfortable, just say hello to the smaller groups in your team. There'll be about 4 or 5 people in there. But maybe if you're comfortable, share some of your experiences. It doesn't have to be your own personal experience. It can be something you've seen in a workplace before, or you've heard about, and just think about applying the 4 steps to that experience. If you're struggling as the group to come up with some experiences that you can take the 4 steps through, just maybe have a discussion around what you think about this and how you think you might be able to use it. So I can see some people are leaving the session. Please stay on to join in this. This is a bit where you get a chance to really talk through this. But what's going to happen is I just open what we call a breakout session, and it just randomly puts you in groups. So I'll put into groups of around, say, sort of 5 to 6, and some people may join. What it will do is when I press open breakout sessions, it will just ask you to go into a breakout session on the screen. You just click on that, takes you into that smaller session, and all you're doing is maybe talking through some experiences, applying these 4 steps to it to see how it might be different or change your thinking. And then I'll be asking you to come through afterwards. I just get some people to share some of their thoughts that they had. It's not a test, it's just to help you sort of apply this for your own things. So great, we've got about 4 or 5 people in. When you come back from the session, sometimes the audio goes off, so just come out all the way out of the whole session and just come back in on the same link, and you'll be able to hear us again. So if there are no questions then, what I'm going to do is just pop you in there. It'll just be, say, I don't know, 4 or 5 minutes. It's not a huge one. And there's no right or wrong answer. It's a chance for you to talk through. So I'm going to create those assignments now. So just making sure we've got a good amount of people in there, and that my colleagues aren't put in there. I don't want to have my colleagues join you with my text. So I'm going to start it now. Yeah, if you've got to leave, that's absolutely fine. But yeah, a chance for you to do it. If you have any problems, you can always come back into the main session and talk to me if you are concerned about it. Okay. Oh, they're not recorded, so you can talk about it in confidence in your sessions. So the breakout sessions aren't recorded. So I'll bring you all back in about 5 minutes or so. Thanks, everyone. Okay. So just ask you on the screen to go into the session. If you just click on join, it'd be great. So just click on the screen. It should help you go into the session. Maybe if you're using a different way of joining, it might not click in straight away. Welcome back, people coming back into the session. Some bit earlier, maybe. Great. Welcome back, everyone that's coming back into the main session. Great, I can see you're joining us straight away. The videos will come on. If you don't want your camera on, you can switch it off again. That's okay. So fantastic. I hope you're having some good discussions. It's a short amount of time, but actually, you know, maybe it's just getting that thinking, that initial thought, and you can apply this much later. Great. Thank you for being on the session, Lynn. No problem. So yeah. So I'm just interested to hear maybe some of the thoughts that were coming from there. You can either pop it on the chat box, or maybe just come off mute and share your ideas. If anybody wants to do that, I'll just check. Does anybody want to share their thinking? It'd be nice to hear somebody else's voice. Do just
I'm happy to.
Great, Kerry. Oh, thank you very much. So what, you know, tell me about the chat you were having.
And anyone else from my group, feel free to share. So we were talking about people that are extroverted, actually. So we talked about, we'd seen quite a lot of bias against people in positions that maybe have tattoos and piercings. One of the team actually has experienced bias where they've had conversations that have taken place with them about progression, and maybe that being affected by the way that they look. I've definitely seen that over the years. And the one thing that I probably see the most of is about females that have had children, and in talent sessions, not in my current company, but there's definitely been conversations, and it's happened to me, where no, they're not right for that job because they've just had a child, so they won't be able to manage the workload, and that assumption's been made for them. And also about individuals who are naturally introverted. Now, obviously I'm an extrovert, but I have to challenge in calibrations views that because people don't necessarily contribute in meetings, that they're not as competent. And, you know, I have to push back on that and say, okay, well, what value do they add?
Yeah,
you know, they may not be the loudest person in the room, and I'm laughing because I am extroverted. But I definitely see that a lot about introverted people, that they're almost judged on that as a competency issue, which just is so not inclusive, but it does happen.
It's really interesting, and there's three examples, really good examples there, and I like that we're thinking not just discriminatory. So the first example, there isn't a law against how people look, you know, so you can officially discriminate, not that one would, but you're right, it's that bias behind it. How is that actually making a difference to their ability to do the job, to do the work? The second one is actually discriminatory, so you can't discriminate against somebody because they've got children, because they are pregnant. So yeah, that would be something. And the last one there, yeah, absolutely, sort of that idea that somebody's different to me, they don't think in the same way I do, you know, more naturally sort of introvert or extrovert, that there is a competency. Really nice discussions. Great. Anyone want to add anything else? If you do, just say it, and I'll just look at the chat whilst you're doing that. Just let me get this up. So, oh, lovely. Could have got brilliant chat. Could have gone on a bit longer. Sorry, sorry, Simon. Yeah, we got a short amount of time. Positive discrimination. Yeah, so that opposite side of it, that still is illegal if it's around those 9 protected characteristics. Thanks for the chat. Question came up. We do need to believe. Do need to let go. Sorry. Question came up. Do we need to let go of our beliefs to address it? I think what these steps say is that it's not wrong or right to have an unconscious bias, and I don't think it is. It is, you know, how we're naturally built as humans. What we're saying here is, are they the things that are they making differences in the decisions that you're making, that therefore you're not making the right decision? And that's that last thing there, is saying make the decision based on the evidence that you've got, that you've worked through. So it's not saying that you can't have them, it's just maybe challenge them on the decisions you're making, particularly if they do relate to those protected characteristics. Certainly in the workplace, you do, and if you're managers, that's certainly a thing you can do. Affinity, how we straight away make an instant judgment. Yeah, perhaps need to step back, talk to others. Just, yeah, it's not an affinity. Also confirmatory instant judgment. We do make an instant judgments, and it's just trying not to put any of those judgments when we're writing things down. It's to think through them. I unconsciously just, you know, write facts, write what people are saying. If you're interviewing, I can unconsciously do that in meetings. Not everyone is vocal as me. Need to remember, yes, the introverted, extroverted. We all recognise in larger, but it's yeah, it is an uncomfortable process. You're all yeah, honest about it. Yeah, and it can help you. It's entirely that it's like opening the mind. Great one to end on there, Catherine. Thank you, everyone. I really appreciate your input there. Just a few more things. So I did say about an hour. If you needed to go soon, that's okay. But just thinking about what you can do. You know, what you can do about this. So maybe have some actions that you're going to take to do this. But one thing is a Project Implicit by Harvard University, and they've got tests that can help you uncover your unconscious bias. So if you go to Project Implicit, if you just put it in the Google, and you can take a test there, and what it'll do is it will show you sort of take you through tests to help uncover it. Now you've got to feel confident. It's not recorded as you. There's no way that they can find, you know, you can be as honest as you want. It's not. It's only for you. And they're building, I guess, some kind of study around it. But you wouldn't be able to come back to you, you know, as an individual. But be aware of what results you might get. You might be surprised, and it's a bit about, you know, Catherine was saying there, it can be a bit uncomfortable. But if you want to find out a little bit more, if you want to be open-minded, then it's a good one to go. Okay. Interesting one, actually, April. I'm just looking at the question. Challenging question: is bias mainly a visual thing? If we blind interviewed without seeing individual, the outcome might be different. Yeah, it could be. Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's like a lot of people don't put their names on CVs anymore because there is a bias within that. Yeah. And possibly voice speech, I think it is as well. Yeah, so accents as well, you know, people have views around you know, north, south, etc. So yeah, they're a bit, so yes. Okay, good discussion, good thinking. I really, really like it. Yeah, please do think about some actions. What actions are you going to do now? So, from what we've done today, if anybody just wants to share on in the chat box, what's kind of one action that this has inspired you to do? Maybe something that you want to take away and actually do as a result of this. The Harvard test, fantastic. Thank you. I've got a real passionate person here, Simon. That's lovely. I really like it. Yep. Anything else? Anything that's coming through? Oh, thanks, Catherine, to share that. Yeah, likewise. Also share with others in our business. Thank you. This is lovely. Some peer-to-peer support here. Fantastic. Training with my leaders around bias. Yeah, Kerry, that's really good. Really good thinking. Going to challenge myself more. Yeah, I like it. So, you know, please do go through that. So, just to kind of close the session then, we do have another webinar coming up. If you enjoyed this one, we do have conflict as a beneficial tool, that concept that conflict is actually a really positive experience. So conflict can be kind of a really a positive thing to do. It's a natural thing that happens, and how can we embrace that and make it work rather than necessarily it kind of going a completely different way. And so just to close, I've got a couple of poll questions, and then just thinking about, you know, if there's a topic that you think you or your team, so Kerry, you just said they may be giving some training to your leaders, please do get in touch with us and we can discuss how we can best support you, so we can do this sort of in a sense there. Or if there's, you know, we do apprenticeship training, which is funded training by the levy, or you were able to do that if you've got decision makers. And actually, the funded training, there's kind of a 1 week left for enrolment on some of that. So please do get in touch if you're interested in it. James, you shared us the next webinar here, so please do sign up for that. That'd be fantastic. And just the last thing for me is just doing a couple of questions here on a poll, just so we can help with our marketing and understand where people have come in from for this session, why you've kind of prompted that. I'm just going to put on it sort of up for just 30 seconds, and if you wouldn't mind just answering quickly the sessions on there. Other than that, thank you very much, everyone. I hope to see you on another session. As I said, please do speak with our colleagues, you know, get in touch with us if you are interested in any other training around that. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate that. I'm just going to pop the poll up now. So
thank you.
That's great. Thanks. Great. People have popped that in. Great. Thank you, Simon. Great to have you on the session. Enthusiast. Thank you, everyone. Great. Thanks, everyone. Okay. So if you've done everything, again, I hope to see you on another session. Thank you very much. Thanks for joining in, doing the poll, being such good participants, and I'll see you again. Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Bye
you.
now. Bye. Just press the big red button and that'll take you off. So it's great. Thank you, everyone.